I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation, a fatal love triangle involving a porn actress, the father of her children, and that father's son from another mother. Here's the story. Devyn Michaels, known to some as Nikki Morganchild, to others as Tracy Tavares, once lived a life in front of a camera. But the spotlight she's under now is far darker. Once an adult film star, she settled into domestic life with her partner, John Willette, helping raise their 2 tween daughters. But when that relationship crumbled, Devyn shocked everyone, marrying John's much younger son, Devyn. What began as an unconventional love story has spiraled into a chilling true crime saga. Now Devyn stands accused of murdering John, the man who once shared her home and family. In court, she points the finger squarely at her husband, John's own son. Betrayal, jealousy, obsession, and a family destroyed. Was it Devyn's plan all along, or is she just another casualty of twisted love gone deadly? This one's different. We've covered a lot of love triangles before. This one, absolutely different. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who's been following this case for us. All right, let's start where everyone needs to start in this case to understand how everyone's connected to one another. What do we know about the relationships in this love triangle?
Well, Vinny, it's pretty non-traditional, pretty convoluted to say the least, and I'm going to speak really slowly so our viewers can make an attempt to follow. And just for our viewers, we have a graphic we made that we're going to put up on screen so they can follow along as well, kind of a family tree type of deal. So we're going to start here with the victim, Johnathan Willette. Now, Johnathan had a relationship with a woman, and they had a son together, Devyn Willette. Now, Johnathan split from Devyn's mother to have a relationship with Devyn Michaels. That is the defendant on trial here. Now, Johnathan and Devyn have 2 daughters, but they never married. Johnathan had full custody of these girls who are now preteens. Now, at some point before Johnathan was killed, Devyn married Johnathan's son, Devyn, who, I mean, they weren't, you know, Johnathan and Devyn weren't married, but this is essentially kind of like her stepson. Now, Devyn and Johnathan's son said that the marriage was, quote, out of convenience for some insurance purposes, but it was revealed that they had a romantic relationship. So pretty much, Vinny, Devyn married Johnathan's son and, you know, ended up, now Johnathan's dead in the mix of all this. But I want to take a listen to this, Vinny. Here's Devyn in a police interview telling an investigator that she married Johnathan's son, Devyn. Let's hear that audio played out in court when she tells this to the investigator.
So you guys have been off and on since when?
No, we're not off and on. We're just trying to make a family work. Like, we're not physically intimate or anything like that. We're just trying to, because the girls really want us with one house, yeah. And it saves on gas, so we're trying to make that.
Do you have a boyfriend or anything right now?
Yeah, I'm married.
You're married?
Yes, sir.
I was not told that information. I thought you guys...
I'm married, but... Okay.
We were told that you guys are possibly trying to get back together.
No, we're trying to get everyone in one house and be a family.
Oh, okay.
For the girls.
So, who are you married to?
I'm married to Devyn.
The son?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So, Devyn, his son, and you are now married. How long have you been there?
Almost 2 years. And yeah, John knows.
Now, Vinny, you saw that picture there that was playing on the screen of Devyn and Devyn having their tongues almost locked there. You know, one can make an assumption of what was going on. Now, Devyn also testified, and he was asked about what he and his father, the victim, talked about regarding Devyn. Take a listen to this.
Did you ever tell your dad that you had been having a sexual relationship with the father of his other children?
With the mother, you mean?
The mother. Jesus, I said father.
No, sir.
I apologize. Knowing your dad as you did, if he had known you were having a sexual relationship with his mother of his children, is he the type of guy that would have just said nothing and let it go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you never tell him. I don't want to ask an obvious question, but why not?
I couldn't build up the courage to do it.
I mean, you had resentment for your father, fair to say?
No, sir.
And then kind of realized who he was as a person. And when you were talking about moving out of Yoko's house, you said, I got out as soon as I could, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, Vinny, something important to note. The defense said that Devyn told police that the marriage between him and Devyn was sexless. It didn't have any intimacy going on. But then later, the defense showed photos of messages between Devyn and Devyn, sexting photos to the jury, trying to point toward his dishonesty.
Yeah, I don't think he owned up to that. I don't know if he owned up to his father, but his father would be okay with that, would be cool with that. All right, Cody's going to stick around. This whole thing brings us to our first question in our investigation. How did this unusual family situation impact what happened here? You talk about tension in the air, tension in the room, tension in the home. Yet Devyn is living with Devyn, her husband, yet the father of her children, the father of her husband, wants to move into the house. What? Here to help answer this question, family law attorney, law professor Randy Kessler, and nationally known psychotherapist and author Dr. Robbie Ludwig. She's also host of the podcast and YouTube series, The Pivot, with Dr. Robbie Ludwig. Great to have you both here. All right, Dr. Robbie, what are your thoughts here, first of all, about this unusual family situation, circumstance, tension in the air, father, son, romantic rivals, potentially living together. Ugh. She's sleeping with her former stepson, maybe? I don't know. And the two girls are in the middle of the whole thing, the daughters.
What a mess. It reminded me of Hamlet a little bit. Secrets, lies, murder, betrayal. So this is just a messy situation. And I don't know why the father of these two children, why he would want to be back in a home with his son who married his ex. It's just messy. It brings up jealousy, hostility, betrayal. It seems like nobody really is honest in this whole mix. And so it was a very murderous situation, if you will. It sounds like the stepson had a lot of rage towards his father, perhaps because what his father did to his mother. Perhaps he was seeking revenge by taking his father's girlfriend and marrying her to somehow avenge his mother's betrayal. But it just sounds like we have a lot of personalities here who don't know how to manage their impulses, their emotions, and it was just a messy, hostile situation of betrayal which turned into murder.
All right, Randy, let's pick up on something that Dr. Robbie was talking about, and I think it's in your wheelhouse. You've seen a lot through the years in your family law practice. It seems that John, the victim, wanted to move back in with the mother of his children so his children would have mom and dad together in the home along with stepdad, their stepdad/brother. I think he was looking at the best interests of the children. At least that's what he was saying. What are your thoughts? How unorthodox is all of that?
Yeah, stepdad/stepbrother, right? Is it his stepbrother or his stepdad? Believe it or not, this is not that uncommon in my practice. 20 years ago, I had a guy walk in, his wife and he lived with their son and their son's wife. And he said, "We've got a child support issue." I said, "Oh, your wife's pregnant?" He said, "No, it's my son's wife." I said, "So your son's going to have to pay child support?" He said, "Well, it's actually me." You know, this happens unbelievably much too often. And of course, family dynamics cause family, murder. And we see it, Donna Adelson, we see all these family dynamics. Everyone's got somebody in their family that they may hold a grudge against. This goes beyond holding a grudge. This is just crazy. Whether she did it or the son, her husband, did it, it's a family issue. And it's another family drama.
Dr. Robbie, I'm still not clear on why she would do it. Like Devyn, I get it. He's not charged. No one is saying, well, the defense is saying he did it, but no one from the government is saying that he did it. But just looking at it from the outside, like he and his father, there's absolute friction there. But between Devyn and John, what would be the motivation there?
Well, for Devyn, Johnathan was messing up her family of choice. She finally had the family she wanted. She had the husband that she wanted. She had her 2 children, and this was a happy situation for herself. And to have Johnathan move back in, her ex, who also happens to be the father of her husband, it's just, too many different roles, too much potential for chaos and problems. And she probably just didn't want any of that. And the fact that Johnathan wanted to interfere with the family she had created that she enjoyed most likely created a lot of rage for her. She finally had what she wanted, and he was going to mess it up. So that could have contributed to her murderous rage and her goal to get rid of him and pretend he just didn't exist.
Randy, I'm just curious, if a custody case was in front of a judge, is it a better situation for the children to be with mom and her new husband, who's also their brother, or to be with dad, who is living with his mother, which would be grandma?
So every case is so unique. This should be on the bar exam, this kind of hypothetical, because who knows? And the right analysis is what's best for these children. What is the brother/stepfather like? Is he a good caretaker? What's the dad like? Most judges think that children should be in an intact household. So if they can be with a mother and a father figure, like her new husband, that's usually better than the other household. But in this case, then you've got dad, the real dad, and a mother figure, meaning grandma. So I don't know. This is a toss-up as to which side is better, or which is the worst or the least of 2 evils.
Yeah, and everyone feels bad. I mean, now the children are left, without a dad. Mom is charged with murder, and stepdad wants nothing to do with anybody. Like, he wants to just get out of Dodge. All right, Randy, sticking around. Dr. Robbie, great to see you. Coming up next, is there a connection between Devyn Michaels' porn career and what happened?
But I can actually prove my innocence. I actually can. And I'm not going to stop fighting to prove my innocence.
A former porn actor caught in a deadly father-son love triangle.
I'm not going to stop fighting to prove my innocence.
The Love Triangle Beheading Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Sunday nights on Court TV. Join us for a night of food, friends, and our favorite legal dramas. It's Order in the Court. And this week, we're binge-watching Bull. Sundays on Court TV.
Man, in 2022, you better be a jack of all trades, man. Above average on everything. Don't do just one thing good. You're doing the landscaping today. You better get your money, be a chameleon, and act the way you're supposed to act.
That's the victim, John Willette, on Facebook back in 2022. Promoting his business, promoting himself, trying to make money, trying to make ends meet, working hard for it. And he had 2 girls, right? 2 little girls that he's raising along with their mother, Devyn Michaels, who's now accused of murdering him and leaving him headless in his bed at his mother's house. Okay, let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, I want to talk about Devyn Michaels and her career, because that's another big part of this story, of this case. What do we know?
Well, yeah, Vinny, she got into the adult film industry in the year 2000 when she was in her early 20s. Now, throughout her duration as an adult film star, she worked for plenty of notable adult film production companies. Some people may have heard of, like Hustler and Penthouse and Elegant Angel, among others. Now, during this time, she was also nominated for an AVN Award, an Adult Video News Award in 2004, for Best Tease Performance. But, of course, she has since retired from the industry. Now, Vinnie, here's something to note here, being here at Court TV. Somewhere in the middle of all of that, she was married to a man who is a familiar face with the trials here on the network, a man by the name of Robert Baker. Now, Baker, also a former adult film star, and also, for our Court TV fans, now convicted murderer from the celebrity stylist murder trial that played out right here on Court TV. He was involved in a similar story involving this love triangle with his lover, Monica Simontilli. You might remember that name. Ended in the death of Monica's husband, Fabio Simontilli. Now, during that trial, he testified about his previous marriages. One of those marriages we now know is to Devyn Michaels. Take a listen to this.
When did you first get married?
The first time?
Yes.
The very first time.
Very first time.
Back in 82.
Okay, you were still in the armed services?
Yes.
And you mind telling us the name of the person you married?
I'd rather not.
Okay. How long were you married to her?
4 years.
Okay. And who was your second wife?
I'd rather not mention her name either.
Pardon?
I said I don't want to mention her name either.
So, Vinnie, he didn't want to mention any names because around that time, Devyn Michaels was already in trouble. He didn't mention names of either one of them, but we can assume that's probably why he didn't want to put her out there under the bus. Now, since retiring from the adult film industry, Devyn Michaels took on a new venture. She posted a video of herself on Facebook talking about her new journey as a realtor. Take a listen.
Hey everyone, it's me, Devyn Michaels. We are on our final hour of our open house over here at 9179 Smugglers Beach Court. It's right off of Blue Diamond in El Capitan. Come say hi.
And Vinnie, also in a police interview, Devyn told them about what she had been doing for work and how she was kind of off to a rocky start within this field. Take a listen to this.
Are you working? Yes, no. I do real estate. Okay. Why would you get that sector? Because, you know, for almost a full year I wasn't making any money. So I went through my savings. I had to take my stocks out just recently to get things caught up. Yeah, I've been struggling trying to get all of this back on track.
So, Vinnie, that's the extent of her career, all of that leading up to this point. But, Vinnie, what are the odds that she is what used to be married to Robert Baker, who is now convicted murderer, that we covered here at Court TV?
It's unreal. 2 exes, 2 different, completely separate cases, both charged with murder, 1 convicted. We'll see what happens with Devyn. Thanks, Cody. All right, that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is there a connection between Devyn Michaels' porn career and what happened? Right? Did that change the way she saw the world, the way that she interacted with her stepson, with her lover? Here to help with our investigation is Brittany De La Mora, Executive Director of JesusLovesPornStars.org. She's also a former adult film actress. Also joining us, forensic psychologist Dr. John Della Torre. Thank you both for being here. Brittany, let me ask you, from your perspective, being in the industry and then leaving the industry or trying to leave the industry, do you leave in a state of mind where some folks can be so damaged that there's a blurring of right from wrong and how to live?
I mean, I was in the adult film industry for 7 years of my life and never considered taking somebody else's life. However, I know that a lot of people that get into the adult industry get in because of childhood trauma that they're carrying, and they feel like it's just an easy escape. And then when you get into the industry, you experience a whole new level of trauma. So when I left the industry, I mean, I have given my life to the Lord, and I had to go through an intense healing process with him and have done intensive therapy as well. So it's not to say that the porn industry wasn't to play, but I don't think that it's a definite, like, for sure thing.
Fascinating. Dr. John Della Torre, to me, that's interesting. I don't think, and I don't know, but I presume that Devyn Michaels didn't get the type of counseling that Brittany got and perhaps experienced a lot of trauma in the industry and maybe prior to being in the industry. What are your thoughts there about how that impacts someone's worldview, someone's actions, someone's compass about right from wrong? And here we're talking about a case not just of murder, But if you take it back to the family dynamics, where she is basically raising children with one man and then decides to marry that man's son.
Well, yeah, I think the initial impact is definitely one of exploitation, right? You're always exploited when you're starting off and people are trying to trick you and people are giving you drugs and people are saying that you can do this thing but not this other thing. It changes the way you see sex. It changes the way that you see relationships. Now, is it directly related to the behaviors that she chose to do? No, I don't think so. But what I think it did do was shift how she perceived her own autonomy. It shifted how she perceived who she could be in any relationship. Perhaps she thought herself as always being subjected to men and the wills of men and the needs of men. And that certainly came to a point in which she could no longer foster that kind of thought, and she needed to find a way to exact her own agency for whatever reason she thought she needed to do so.
Brittany, can you tell us, either from your perspective or from people that you've worked with in the past or know, the difficulty or lack of difficulty in engaging in relationships after or during a career in the adult film industry? And, you know, for a lot of people, relationships often involve the activity that is the subject of adult films, right? That's a part of the relationship. How is that negotiated? How do you make that balance? How do you make it work, or how difficult is it?
Well, when I left the adult film industry, I had chose to be celibate until my wedding night. And thankfully, my husband, he wanted to practice the same exact thing, because I knew that I had a lot of healing to go through. The things that you experience in the adult film industry and the types of scenes that you have to act out, like, I guarantee you, Devyn at some point in her career probably did act out like a stepmother type of scene, because that's a very popular kind of thing within the industry. And so the types of things that you do have to act out, it really does rewire your brain. And then you're driven to just like follow that type of direction, where what's healthy to what's unhealthy to most people would be considered healthy to somebody that's left the porn industry because of what you've been exposed to.
All right, we're short on time here, but I want to thank Dr. John Delatorre and Brittany Delamore. Brittany, thank you so much for sharing your story, and it's great to see you smiling, and it looks like things are going great for you, so that's awesome. All right, folks, we got more ahead. Still to come. This is a tough question. Where is the victim's head? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of an unusual love triangle involving a father, his son, and a porn actress. Dad is dead, the actress is accused, and the son is looking to distance himself from all of this. Here's the story. Tracy Tavares reinvented herself many times as Devyn Michaels, as Nikki Morganchild, and finally as a woman chasing redemption. But that chase has ended in a murder trial that has stunned even seasoned investigators. Devyn lived with her lover, John Willette, raising their 2 daughters. Then, in a shocking twist, she left him to marry his son, Devyn. Family bonds shattered, loyalties fractured, and resentments simmered. Now John Willette is dead, and Devyn stands accused of murder. But her defense is defiant. It wasn't her, it was Devyn. 2 versions of the same horrific night, one fueled by love, the other by revenge. In a case filled with deceit and betrayal, the only certainty is this: one family's secrets have turned fatal. Obviously, in this case, relationships are important. But then you get into the courtroom and you've got to prove your case and prove it beyond any and all reasonable doubt. And that takes evidence, and it all starts at the scene of the crime. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. What do we know about this crime scene?
Well, Vinny, what we do know is that it was quite a brutal one, and there's been plenty of testimony throughout this trial so far about how brutal it actually was. And now, Vinnie, before we take a listen to some of that testimony, I want to give our viewers a fair warning that there are some graphic photos of a lot of blood throughout, you know, as the witnesses are talking about it. And they also, during this trial, they showed a photo of the victim's decapitated body. But of course, that was too graphic for us to show here on the program. But let's take a listen to some of that testimony right now.
So that's on the opposite side of the bed. Now we're standing on the opposite side of the bed, where you can see the top portion of the victim, and you have that small kind of area just between the bed and dresser, some other furniture items along that wall.
The larger stain on the ground, is that an area you would refer to as saturation point?
Yes.
And then there's another lighter spot above that, correct?
Correct.
Just tell me kind of what your observations were related to this blood and the positioning of the victim.
So that was right below where the victim's head would have been. Clearly that's where we saw the bloodletting injury, if you will, occurring. So that's where carpet is a little difficult, but those were saturation stains. So it was just blood that had pooled and saturated in those areas right below where he was at.
98, this is a different perspective. Oops. What are we looking at here?
So that is the upper portion of the victim, again, void of his head.
And just for the record, is there a substantial amount of blood on top of a blue and white comforter?
Yes.
And then what is this item right here?
That's a large pillow that was underneath the top portion of the victim's torso.
Stage 101, different perspective of the area where his head should be, correct?
Correct.
Did you make any observations about the color, I guess texture, or anything about the blood?
Yes, the blood appeared black, just dark, extremely dark, atypical of what we usually see.
The same perspective, but it shows a little bit of the pooling over here as well.
Yes.
And ma'am, did you make any general deductions related to where this person was decapitated?
We felt like it was done right there.
Why do you say that?
I mean, there wasn't any signs of a struggle. There wasn't any signs that he had been moved. There wasn't, if anything, we hypothesized whether or not he'd been rolled from back to front, but that was the extent of the movement that we felt that he had gone through.
Did you smell anything while you were in the scene?
It was overwhelmingly, the chemical smell was overwhelming, burning our eyes, burning our nostrils. It was overpowering, the chemical smell that was coming specifically from this area. That smell was present throughout this room, but the closer you got to this area of the victim, when you walked around the foot of the bed and came towards this area, it was overpowering.
And Vinnie, what we're looking at now, we're looking at evidence photos of the cleaning supplies. You heard her there on the stand talking about the overpowering smell of those chemicals. This could suggest, to the jury that someone was trying to clean this up. And now, Vinnie, we move on to another evidence photo of bullets and shell casings that were shown in court. And of course, we don't know how he was killed. We just know that he was brutally decapitated. But this leaves open the question, how did he die? But Vinnie, right now, let's take a listen to testimony specifically about the decapitation of Johnathan Willette.
This decapitation was a post-mortem event, so yes, after death.
I believe your term was homicidal violence.
Yes.
But you can't tell us how this person died, correct?
That is correct.
It was a single, straight blade of some sort. And then the second one is a mechanically powered saw.
The severed head was not there. There wasn't, I should say, hardly any blood spatter or anything throughout the room that you may initially think due to the fact that the head was missing.
We also have body cam footage from the first responders arriving to the scene and going toward the bedroom. Take a look at this. So, Vinny, all of this painting the scene, just a very brutal scene of a murder, and also kind of painting the scene of someone maybe trying to cover this all up with those chemicals.
Cody Thomas, thanks so much. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. Where's the victim's head? How was the head removed? Could one person do it? Got a lot of questions. Here to help answer all these questions, forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan, also the host of the very popular podcast, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. All right, Joseph, let's start first. We showed on the screen this blurred version of the victim, what was left of the victim. You have seen the unblurred version of that. What did you take away from that?
The margins were very clean. It didn't look like there was necessarily sawing. The edges around the area were rather uniform, in my opinion, from what I could tell of the image that I was provided. It's not like a clinical image like you see in the morgue necessarily, but something you would see at the crime scene. You can see, I think, is a bony body contained in there, perhaps a vertebral body that has been sawed in two. I find it interesting that they don't see any blood deposition relative because, I think that the forensic pathologist made mention of a power saw of some kind. And generally, when you have that action of a power saw, you'll get blood deposition, very high dynamicism with this will be scattered about. That's one question I think that I would have to ask. How did they delineate between those two? There's certain marks that you can look for, certainly on any of the bony prominences. That's where our friends in the tool mark section at the crime lab will become involved. I'm sure that they have a sample of this bone, by the way, and they would do a comparative analysis of that. But then, the big mystery is where's the head and why was it taken away? And I think I've got some answers for that, Ben.
Go ahead. Go to it.
Yeah, well, I saw, first off, you guys threw up that image of that spent casing that was on the floor. And just taking a look at that alone, I'm really wondering if the head was not potentially taken away to remove any kind of indwelling evidence that may have been contained within the skull itself, either potentially a projectile or maybe evidence of an attack of some kind, because absent that head, remember what the forensic pathologist said, it's non-specific homicidal trauma. And that's very common. You and I have covered cases for years where we've heard that terminology applied. And it's not surprising. I think there are other cases out there where heads have been removed and taken away. I don't know if you recall the father and the son. The father was a judge. Do you remember that? That was a few years ago down in Florida. They never recovered the judge's head in that case. Of course, that was a standard dismemberment case. But heads are removed many times and taken away. Sometimes they're taken as trophies.
Joseph Scott Morgan is going to stay with us. Coming up next, does the timeline prove the case?
Around 8 o'clock, Nikki came. Did Nikki come in her own vehicle? 彼女の車で来たんですか? That's correct.
Mama tried. Now my daddy's crying because I'm in here.
You are the common denominator that led to JD and Big Doug shooting each other in the dark of night.
I ain't help right now, I'm dying.
Don't you have the blood of both these men on your hands?
I felt guilty for that.
You felt guilty because, frankly, you were guilty.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
The way that they manipulated and altered and deleted things is wrong. They should not be able to do it, and they have. And for you to be able to look me in the eye knowing that the things are altered and don't know what to do with anymore.
Judge, I'm not comfortable with this record.
Devyn Michaels pleaded guilty, admitted her guilt. That was her sentencing. And then at sentencing, she was claiming her innocence. And at that point, the plea was taken away, and that's why she's now on trial. Let's check back in one more time with Cody Thomas, field reporter here at Court TV. Cody, what is the state's timeline for this murder?
Well, Vinny, of course, they're still pointing the finger heavily at Devyn Michaels, citing all sorts of location data and her movements that day. Let's take a listen to their breakdown. On the morning of August 7, 2023, Henderson police spoke with Johnathan Willette's mother after she discovered his decapitated body in his bedroom.
Around what time did that call come out?
Don't know the exact time, but I roughly think it was around 8:50-ish.
Johnathan Willette was living with his mother in a house on Palo Duro Drive.
I now want to focus on August 6th of 2023. That's the day before you found John. Tell me about that day, what you remember.
Around 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., he was packing by himself.
Prosecutors say the night before he died, Johnathan was preparing to move back in with his ex-girlfriend and the mother of their daughters, Devyn Michaels, who was also known as Nikki.
Around 8 o'clock, Nikki came.
Did Nikki come in her own vehicle?
彼女の車で来たんですか? That's correct.
About 2 hours later, surveillance video showed Johnathan and Devyn at a convenience store.
Do you remember what time John and Nikki came back to your house?
帰ってきたのは何時頃ですか? 10時頃. Around 10 o'clock.
Several hours later, Johnathan Willette's mother says she heard a loud noise.
1:15, she went to the bed, and then around 2 o'clock while she was sleeping, she got some noise.
Was it like a bang?
Bang, something like that.
Investigators accessed data on Devyn's vehicle, a Nissan Armada, that showed her leaving Jonathan's house around 2:04 a.m. They also say that the cell phone data from both Johnathan and Devyn's phones showed them traveling together at that time. At 2:28 a.m., Devyn is seen at a CVS pharmacy drive-thru. No one else is seen in her car. According to her car's infotainment system, she arrived at her house on Porcupine Rim at 2:44 a.m. Now, Vinny, let's remember that is the prosecution's timeline, but the defense is still pointing the finger at Devyn, the defendant's husband and the victim's son.
Cody Thomas, great job tonight. Thank you, sir. That brings us to the final question in our investigation. Does the timeline prove the case here? Let's bring back in our guests here to help us. Family law attorney, law professor Randy Kessler, and forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. Joseph Scott Morgan, I'll begin with you. A lot of what I think is good circumstantial evidence here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. And again, we have these digital electronic breadcrumbs that are kind of showing the way, Vin, as they do in a lot of these cases nowadays, right? And I think that this marries up with the timeline that the prosecution and the investigators have developed after painstakingly going over every bit of this data. I think that it's important to note that this noise that is heard in this house, that's kind of a marker, right? I mean, we can talk about electronic data all we want to, but when you have an individual that turns out to be an ear witness and they're aware of the time, I think that that's kind of critical, and I think that the jury wants to hear that sort of thing, Ben.
Randy Kessler, what are your thoughts here? Does this prove the case for prosecutors?
Well, number one, I'm always going to defer to Joe Scott because he's the guru in this kind of stuff. But the timeline certainly proves it. The question is not does it prove it. The question is does it prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And again, like an old friend of all of ours used to say, there's always the defense of SOD, some other dude. So in this case, you do have somebody else that is a viable alternative defendant. So does it prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? I don't know. I think it proves it beyond tipping the scales. If it was a civil case, certainly. Does it make somebody, guilty because there's a timeline? Some people on the jury want eyewitnesses. They want, to make sure that there are pictures of somebody doing the deed or handprints and fingerprints on the gun. They don't have that. So yes, it proves it, but is it beyond a reasonable doubt? Depends on who's on the jury.
Justice Scott Morgan, let me ask you, I'm going to just go back to the decapitation again. In terms of how long that would take, and could a 47-year-old female, former actress like Devyn, do you think someone like that would be physically able to do that?
Yes. She gets past the gore. Yeah, it's no problem. As a matter of fact, decapitations, as far as dismemberment go, are the easiest thing to facilitate on human remains. You've got soft tissue on the anterior aspect of the neck, and then you have the bony prominences of the spinal column. And if it doesn't even require saw to go through the vertebral bodies. If you get into one of the disc spaces, all it is a matter of trimming out some of the connective tissue, and you freed the head up. So yeah, this is well within reason that she could facilitate this.
Randy, do you think she needs to testify to explain the timeline from her perspective?
Based on what I saw at her sentencing, I think she should stay as far away from the witness stand as possible. She's a loose cannon. We don't want any loose cannons on the witness stand. Make the state prove their burden. Make the state convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that she did this, and make let the defense. If I was the defense, I'd just point the finger at his son and say, that guy was trying to come back in and steal his woman back from him, and he wasn't going to have it. That's the best thing the defense has going for them.
Justice Scott Morgan, we have about 20 seconds left here. Another thing people are talking about, the amount of blood. From what you saw in the photos, was that consistent with what you would expect? Was there more? Was there less?
Yeah, that would be consistent, having been done in that position. And again, you cannot measure volume of blood in a soft area like a carpet or a bed sheet. So it's only kind of a qualitative guess at that particular moment. However, just looking at the stain and not being able to appreciate the depth of the stain, which puts us at a disadvantage because you've also got carpet padding underneath there, which acts as a sponge. Yeah, for me, just looking at that, yeah, I could say that is potentially a spot where this individual was decapitated.
Justice Scott Morgan, Randy Kessler, thank you both so much. A trial is a search for the truth, but in this case, it may be difficult to get the whole truth. Devyn Michaels was ready to plead guilty, but she said she was innocent. John Willette's head is still missing, and no one can figure out where his head is. But will these lingering questions save Devyn from a conviction? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.